It's like Park Avenue when it becomes Park Avenue South. This is the Stack Exchange Podcast, episode 34, with special guest Nick Craver.
Hello.
Hello, and Nick Craver is one of the developers. So Nick, have you ever been on the podcast before?
I don't believe so. No.
Really? This might be okay. So this is his first time on the Stack Exchange or the Stack Overflow podcast. Even like at Mix when we had like everybody. No, maybe that was just me and Jeff. All right, Kyle Brandt.
Hello.
Kyle is our systems engineer calling us. I like to imagine that you're in Boston, although I know that you're not.
Yeah, I moved to Florida.
You moved, but it makes no difference to me. You're just a voice in the headphones.
Imagine him on the beach now, because his house is right on the beach.
He's probably on his porch talking on his laptop right now.
He doesn't. I don't think he works anymore. He just goes to the beach.
That reminds me why it's a good thing to work for Stack Overflow, and we are hiring actually. So if you live by the beach, or if you want to move to the beach, you can work for us. Just apply for a job. You will have to do a lot of work. And it's extensive.
I do work. So.
And we'll be talking about all that work that you did in a moment. Also here, as usual, our regular host, David Fullerton.
Yo.
VP Engineering. And Jay Hanlon.
Yo.
VP of Growths.
I like the yo.
Did I get it right?
Sounded good when David did it.
It didn't.
You can't steal my line.
When you did it, it came out sort of. Anyway, I won't taunt you further. All right. On the agenda, Quantcast. Like literally 5 minutes before the podcast, we noticed that Quantcast, which measures how much traffic we have, they actually measure it directly. There's a little image bug on every single page on the entire Stack Exchange that goes back to Quantcast and tells them when we're getting a page view. And they're now ranking us at 100. So we're for the first time in the top 100.
Woohoo!
Yay!
Man. Because it's a major milestone. You know, when we first met, when we got the whole company together for the very first time in New York to sort of organize the company. And that was before pretty much anyone here was there except for David.
There.
David was there. And we said, let's set a big, hairy, audacious goal. That's a concept from some business book you can buy in an airport. BHAG. And it's like a crazy, audacious, ridiculously ambitious goal that you set for the company. And our big, hairy, audacious goal was to be a top 50 site. Yeah. Which I think shows that we're lacking in imagination. Because here we are at top 100, so all we have to do...
We're basically done.
...is have that.
We've been going twice as fast as we should be.
We went really fast. I was just looking. It was the last time I did a board report, which was like 3 weeks ago, it was 113. So we are steaming ahead.
Yeah. It's the fall growth season.
Okay. And check out this segue. If all that additional traffic should cause our data center in New York to go down or collapse, what would happen then, Kyle Brandt?
Well, we've been working on failing over to our other data center in Corvallis.
That's a great coincidence.
The main reason what's motivated this is we're moving our New York data center to in a few weeks because our current provider no longer has room for our growth.
I know. It's very embarrassing. They started out with a big empty room, and they gave me a free server for Dolan software. And then now they're full, and they've expanded. And they no longer have room for us to expand. And it's kind of getting to be a pain for both for Stack Exchange and for Fog Creek because neither of us have room to put more stuff in that we have bought. We want to rack up.
Yep. So we're moving
to
the Google building. So we have to fail over unless we want to be down for the whole weekend we move. So we did our last test this past weekend, and it went well, where Stack Overflow and the Stack Exchange network ran out of Oregon for a couple of hours.
Okay, wait, that's way not enough detail because our listeners are going to want all the unbelievably boring detail, which is why you're here. So my idea of just taking the servers and putting them on one of those little rolling racks, like a concierge, like a bellboy uses a bellhop in a hotel. Bellhop? What's a bellboy then? Okay.
It's bellhop and busboy. I think you're confusing.
There you go. I got it. And what's a go-go dancer? All right, never mind.
Very
Same
different.
Same thing.
So a bellhop, we get one of those bellhop carts and put the servers on that.
You're mistreating busboys and bellboys.
Along with several UPSs and a MiFi. Could we use that to stay online while we roll the servers up, down 50 blocks?
You know, you joked, but we've discussed this, and we think we could if we bonded 4 MiFis together. We could do it for about 45 minutes if we got some really expensive UPSs.
It's a lot of weight. Weight would probably become one of the hardest problems.
Plus, we don't know how Wi-Fi's work on the subway, so I guess you'd have to.
No, we'd just roll it
over.
up the streets.
Yeah, we'd have to walk it up the street.
Yeah.
But what you do is you put it all on like a big furniture dolly and then just like tie it to the back of the cab. Oh wait.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Or you could borrow an elephant.
But instead of doing that, we decided on an even better plan,
That seems hard to believe.
which was, hey, we've still got this data center in Oregon that we've been using for some stuff. It's where Stack Overflow started, right?
Yeah,
back
just
in the
because
day.
it's right next to Jeff Douglas's house,
Because
right?
it's right next to Jeff Douglas's. Well, it's like a half-hour drive for him, but still
No,
convenient.
it's like a mile.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
only like
it's
5
right
minutes or
there.
something.
5 minutes away. I didn't even know.
And that's really, you know how Oregon is. That's really like the next thing in Oregon. Like there'll be a house, and then there'll just be like rattlesnakes and desert and stuff, and then there'll be a data center, and then rattlesnakes for another 5 minutes, and then probably a 7-Eleven or something.
Yeah. So we've got this data center in Oregon, and we were like, hey, we should use it.
All right, so here's my first question: How the heck do you? I thought this was going to be a read-only failover, that we were somehow going to have like a static copy of Stack Exchange running.
Okay, so what we did in a couple, there's, I really should do a blog post of all the dependencies you find when you move this one thing and go, oh, you need 20 more things. The first step was getting the data out there. So that necessitated mirroring all our databases out there, not real time, but a couple seconds behind. And SQL 2008 you can't do that. It blows up after like 10 or 20, and we've got a lot of sites, and each one has a DB. So
wait, SQL 2008 blows up if you. This is just SQL Server mirroring, where you just tell it.
Correct.
And
There's something
is that like
the
log shipping essentially?
No,
is it-
mirroring's different than log shipping, but in either case, log shipping, we're shipping a lot of files, which is just kind of too much for SO. Or the mirroring, just for some reason in the scheduler internally, 2008, after like 15 or 20 databases, it just locks up and dies. And they just say, don't do that. Which is why 2012, the really big change is availability groups. So we can replicate both to New York. We have a backup hot server ready all the time. We can fail over to it to do patching. We've done this transparently without anybody noticing, or we're down for 5 or 10 seconds while it happens. But we also mirror to Oregon now. So at any time, Oregon's read-only about 2 seconds behind New York.
So
this
is entirely done by SQL Server. There's no code. There's no application level code to do this.
So to go with that, there is application level code in terms of like Oregon's hot now, for example. So I build an app code to look at the database and say, are we read-only? And if that's the case, then the sites kick themselves into read-only mode. They disable you from logging in. Developers are still logged in. You can't post questions. You'll see the site like ask question will fade out. And if you click it, you'll get an explanation. Hey, this is down while this is read-only.
So there's a configuration setting that you got to turn on manually?
No, it detects it itself. The first time we try to write to a database and the database says no, then the app detects it and kind of kicks the network into read-only.
So basically the state that we are read-only comes from the fact that the database is read-only.
Correct.
We don't have to worry about how to propagate that state either. It's just automatic. That's really cool.
Now, developers, and this is intentional, we have to bring it out of read-only. We don't want that automatic. But,
and that's because we may have failed over in desperation, and we may not actually want to stay failed over. We may want to come back, and we may know we're coming back in 5 minutes.
Correct. So the scenarios we're looking at for Oregon are if New York gets hit by a meteor. I don't know why that's the analogy, but that's what we discuss.
Well, it's because getting hit by a bus wouldn't do very much.
Well, actually, I mean, the data center, New York does get hit by things.
Okay, so if you get hit by like an 8-story bus.
Actually, the much greater danger was the hurricane last year when we realized that our data center downtown was within the category the first
there was
flood zone.
Yeah, there was an actual category. It was category 1 when it hit Manhattan.
Yeah. But they had like a map with flood zones.
Turned out not to be so bad. We stayed
we were
in the
worst one.
Jared actually walked the dog at the exact moment that the hurricane was hitting Manhattan because the dog just really needed a walk. And he went out there, and there were a lot of people.
That was a perfectly good explanation.
Well, he's not going to pee in the house. I mean, he just, he needs a chance to go to the bathroom.
He probably would. He's a dog.
We had very carefully. Anyway, it's just a little cat one, no big deal. What were we talking about? And we had 9/11. That was also in downtown Manhattan, where our data center is. So there are things that could cause us not to be able to get to our data center for an extended period of time, even if it wasn't actually destroyed.
Right.
It might be off, or it might not be able to get. I think they have a problem at this data center, Pier 1, that they can only have 3 days of diesel fuel for their generators. There's some limit in the amount of diesel fuel they can physically get into the space.
Well, we can also like only fill our racks halfway because they can't give us enough power.
Right. They're
that's a
capped on
general
power.
that's a general problem with just there's not enough. Con Edison hasn't brought them enough electricity.
Well, no, they have enough building power. They just don't have enough generator capacity, and they can't expand past that.
And
That's
heat
the reason
evacuation too, right?
A lot of it is cooling too, so they have all this heat, and when you start powering more servers, it means more heat in that amount of space, and they need the power and ability to get that heat out.
That's
I think that was where their bottleneck was.
I keep reading about how Facebook and Google just run their servers at 90 degrees because that's fine, and they have they have like water stacks or something so that they don't really need heavy central air conditioning.
We can do that. Our new servers, the Dell 12th generation, the R620s and 720s we have, actually run at like 100 degrees, no problem. But everyone else there, not so much.
Right. So that's what I'm wondering. If
Craver does not run at 100 degrees, no problem.
Yeah, that was a sort of an interesting thing that I guess a bunch of, Urs Holtzler at Google and a few others just all noticed at the same time, which is like, hey, wait a minute, these servers are rated for, battlefield conditions so that the Department of Defense will buy them. And it can't possibly be the case that we really have to chill all our data centers to 65 degrees. And then they discovered, because they have enough servers, that they could kind of get it up pretty high, well into the balmy 80s and 90s before the failure rate went up at all.
Mm-hmm.
And but the question is, if we're just buying data centers, like we don't build our own data centers, is there ever going to be a data center that takes advantage of that? Or is this only something that Google and Facebook, who build their own data centers, can get?
I would think it would only be Google and Facebook because there's not enough pressure, because basically you figure it's not going to save me any money because I'm paying a fixed rate. And also it's not comfortable to work in those conditions.
That's true. They have to work in there. At Google, they pretty much have to work in Speedos.
Most humans don't like 100 degrees.
You should see, that's the cold aisle too. You should see the hot aisle.
Yeah, it's like 80 in the cold aisle and 120 in the hot aisle, which averages to 100.
I'm envisioning these interns sitting on 100-degree servers.
Yeah.
Sweat running down their face.
That's an MTV reality show right there. They love it.
My server?
No, the MTV reality shows, they always get these really, they get characters with good bodies and then jack up the temperature. And they're like, oh, sorry, it's the lights. There was no option. It's just going to have to be 90 degrees here in the middle of the winter in Jersey Shore.
Good news. There's a collective shower you can use if things get too hot.
This is
a strange turn.
The real world.
So Jersey Shore.
Okay. Can we talk about the
We've got
situation?
this
Even
data
somebody,
center.
if you want to listen, if you're in the data center business, you could make a data center and just say, we don't air condition that much, and there's a discount if you use the not air conditioned aisle.
Yeah, I could actually picture that happening if it was a new startup, just because new servers tolerate that from all the vendors.
Yeah. Even the old servers would tolerate a lot more than they're getting. They would tolerate 80 degrees easily.
They're pretty good. The hard drive failure rate's the main concern. I don't know how bad it is.
I think Google did a study where they indexed all of their hard drives, and they found that temperature had nothing to do. The single predictor of hard drive failure was age for them. The only consistent predictor of it.
Like light bulbs.
Yeah.
If you didn't see on Reddit the other day, go to look up google.com/data centers, I believe it is. They took pictures inside just yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Really neat to see if you haven't looked at it.
It's data center porn, as this is often described.
One of the interesting things, when a hard drive's dead, you want data protection, they take it out and they put a pneumatic pole through it and just beat the crap out of it.
So the SQL server fails over to... Okay, so I still want to think about the mechanics of the failover. So the very fact that we can fail over with and only lose, a second or two of transactions must mean that everything that's written in New York is then immediately transmitted to Corvallis.
Correct. We have async replication both to New York and to Corvallis. And when we do a manual failover where we intend to lose zero data, then we actually synchronize them for just a second. Normally that's a big deal because every time you commit something to SQL, it has to go acknowledge it on the other one and then come back. And that's really long. So a upvote would
Right.
take 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So we only do that once we shut the floodgates. We kind of turn off the load balancers and do that, and then we quickly come out of that mode.
So the site's
when we
down for a
start
few
that.
seconds.
Correct.
No, it's not even read only. It's just down.
Yeah, it's for sanity's sake. It's better to have it down for about a minute or two rather than have it really slow for like half an hour and unknown amount of time to catch up.
Okay. And then during that time, we're waiting for the sync to occur, which is when SQL Server will guarantee that Corvallis has all the, every last transaction.
Yeah, so there's two things that happen. The SQL one's actually the fastest, which is weird. We didn't think about this till the last minute. Redis, our caching layer for all the web servers, we have to slave that out in Oregon, and that takes a few minutes because it's about 1.6, 1.7 gigs of data it needs to transfer, which takes about 2.5 minutes or something.
Okay, wait a minute. So Redis is a cache,
Mhm.
and the way we have it set up is that Redis sits in front of our database and just basically looks at the SQL string that's going across and decides if
No, Redis is completely separate. We store things in Redis, but if it's not in Redis, often we're going to SQL for it. But it could be an API call. It could be
It's like, go
else.
grab this chunk of HTML. Oh, it's not there. All right, then we'll go generate it.
Okay.
It's not a transparent cache, basically.
Okay, so it's not sitting in front of SQL Server necessarily. It's just another place we store things.
Yes.
Correct.
But it is a cache.
Yeah, it's a cache and it's a messaging mechanism. So if someone, and a good example is our real-time stuff that Jeff Dalgas wrote. If you click upvote, you see the recipient sees their rep tick up in the corner. That's Redis messaging. So we use other aspects of Redis as well.
But given that it's mostly a cache, why do we have to transmit it? Can't we just rebuild it on the other side?
We can.
Faster.
Stack Overflow would be tremendously unpleasant to use while that happened.
Yeah.
We're very
That would
cache heavy.
take a long time.
The reason we don't want to do it is the way inboxes work. We actually shove inboxes into Redis, and then every 15 minutes we go persist in the database. We don't want to lose any items. So Kevin Montrose wrote us some routes the other day that we persist the inboxes right before we slave over or after the slave, so we don't lose any inbox information in the process.
Interesting. So we've got Redis, and it's holding 1.5 gigs of binary blob data. Essentially,
compressed, yeah.
That we have to splurt across the country before we can wake up again in Corvallis.
Mm-hmm. If we don't want to lose any inboxes, otherwise it would just be a little stumbly coming up.
We could probably optimize that. We haven't spent much time on it, right? We probably don't need all of that 1.5 gigs, but
no,
we're just sending everything right now.
Stuff further.
We could, in other words, if we wanted to, we could divide it into the stuff that we want right away to just come online again.
Yeah,
and stuff that.
Well, we could also look at syncing it too, like we do with SQL. Just have it be a few seconds behind.
Oh.
Yeah, we've considered doing that. It uses about 1.4 megabytes a second, so it's not a trivial amount of data. So that's something we'll look at.
That's like permanent bandwidth that we would have to buy. It's essentially we would have to.
Right.
1.4 meg. So that's basically saying if you bought a T1 between us and Corvallis and maintained a 4,000 mile T1, whatever that would cost.
Right. But we get about 20 megabit syncing. The connection itself is a little faster than that. Kyle, do you know what we actually have? It varies. I mean, it's not a dedicated VPN.
As far as how much we can do or how much it's normally putting through?
Normal.
I don't know. I haven't looked at that, actually. It could.
Yeah, we can get I've seen up to 50 megabit to Oregon, but it is a limit, and it is third party, so it drops from time to time as well. And when that happens, you have to start over and resync from scratch.
What?
Like I said, about 2.5 minutes, so it's not a huge deal, but it does happen.
Okay, so we're doing this too. So the sequence is we shut down the site by telling the load balancer to shut down in New York. We tell SQL Server, please finalize any last syncs that you have to send to Corvallis, which is not very many, and it does that pretty quickly because mostly it's been keeping up to date. And we copy the entire Redis working set. What's the word? What's the terminology?
All the Redis databases.
The Redis databases. So do they look like files that you can copy?
No, this is an internal mechanism. We just log into Redis and say slave of New York server, and it does the rest. We actually do this ahead of time. You don't have to do it once. It's just like SQL. It will absorb changes.
Oh, neat. Okay.
As it goes.
So this happens ahead of time. So how long is it actually going to take us before we're up again in the ideal situation where things don't go wrong?
If we know that we're doing the failover, or if it's like a meteor. If we know we're doing the failover, hopefully we haven't done careers yet.
Yeah.
That's the test coming the weekend after this. For the sites, hopefully we can do it in as little as 5 minutes. About 15 is probably what it's going to be. We had problems this last time, but I mean that's why it's a test.
Sure.
We figured out what didn't work.
Yeah.
And the actual steps don't take that long. We've got a nice checklist now for exactly what needs to happen, and we've got some steps we can eliminate and some we can make faster. So
Very cool. Now there was something you guys did. When you failed over, it came up in read-only mode, and later you switched it out into read-write mode. What's that about?
So the sites are live in Oregon right now. You just don't know it. We just shut them off the load balancer.
Yeah.
So the sites are trying to hit a database every so often right now because our load balancer says, "Hey, are you alive?" on the web server, and that itself throws the site into read-only mode. So for safety, we want to come up and read-only. We want to have the data. It's more of a customer service type issue. If you're at work searching for an SO question, we want you to be able to read as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's 99% of our traffic is people reading things.
Absolutely. So like when the network came over, Stack Overflow and the central database we call sites, which is a very confusing name. Go with it. We fail those over as one unit.
It's even more confusing because it's with the letter C.
We should start calling our
citation.
sites the central database.
So we fail those over together. So we can get SO up really fast. And then the rest of the network is a separate group. And the main failover time for SQL 2012 is number of databases. We've had issues with this, and we've been working with Microsoft on it. It's a background networking issue. But once we figured out what that issue was this weekend, we failed over in about 10 seconds. Before, we were timing out 5 minutes at a time, and that was just kind of frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll follow up with them on that.
So anyway, we come up in read-only mode,
mm-hmm.
and then we can say, all right, fine, we can switch it to read-write mode.
Right.
Which we don't have to.
No.
So if we thought that we were going to, and is the idea that if we never allow any writes in Oregon and New York comes back, then we can just, all we have to do is change DNS. We don't have to actually turn off anything in Oregon. We don't have to copy anything back from Oregon to New York because nothing's happened.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, in the failover scenario, we're assuming New York servers are gone.
But you may not know that, right? They just may appear to be down because, let's say, that data center is cut off, and we have no way of finding out. But they might just show up in another minute, or they might never come back.
Correct.
Yeah. The idea is we can turn on Oregon in read-only mode at kind of a moment's notice,
right,
and get it into read-write pretty fast.
I wonder if we would do that.
If we were just doing short maintenance or something, we could just leave it in read-only. If it was, only gonna be 10 minutes, we just.
Yeah, if there was a 10-minute, either a planned 10-minute maintenance over the weekend. But actually, Kyle, that sort of leads to the fact that our TTLs, do we lower our TTLs every time we think this is going to happen and then raise them?
Yeah, we dropped them down to 5 minutes for this because that's how long we thought the SQL would take over.
Mm-hmm.
The DNS server doesn't have any trouble handling a lower TTL, but then the problem is for people in other countries, the DNS responses will be slow, and that'll actually be the biggest bottleneck on their on their page loads.
So we could
keep it an hour normally.
In other words, in principle, we don't mind having a low TTL. We're happy to take the DNS traffic, but it adds to the latency of people that are far away.
Yeah, because more often they have to say, well, recheck what the.
Isn't there? I mean, can't you just have a DNS server in every country? Isn't there something you can buy that gives you a DNS server in a lot of places?
Yeah, there are services. They do tend to be expensive, and then it also can be difficult in terms of management.
Yeah, they cause more problems than they solve, actually.
Yeah,
we used
to
historical.
have one.
Yeah,
and something like this would have been more difficult because they didn't really have, at least at the time, API that would allow us to sort of make these switches easily.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they do now, but.
And what are you using anything besides just generic Unix bind for DNS?
No, there's 2 bind servers in New York and 1 in Oregon that are just always running.
Right. And so you just go and you edit the zone file and then.
Yeah. So for this, I just had a short little script that looked at a table of what to switch it to and what to switch it back and update the serial number and TTL and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, the serial number. I always forget the serial number.
Yeah, you got to update that.
It's like the cause of 90% of DNS mistakes is you change the zone file and you didn't update the serial number.
The worst is usually it's like a date. If you add an extra digit,
Right.
you kind of mess it up. You overflow it, and then you have to intentionally overflow it back to what you want it to be. I learned that lesson once. That was kind of painful.
Then you have a permanently high serial number.
Yeah. Well, you just have to overflow it so it wraps around again, and then you're back where you need to be. But
Oh, I didn't.
yeah, it's a pain. But what we want to do going forward is we use Puppet, which allows us to control configuration files in multiple areas in more of a scalable way. So for this, we had actually done that for all our HA proxy load balancer configuration. So we can start basically keeping Oregon in sync with New York. So we're not like making changes and manually copying them over, but we basically have the same sort of configuration with just different variables depending on the location. And we want to do a similar thing for DNS, and George is working on the DNS part of that now.
Cool. Anything else? Anything else interesting that happened? So presumably we're going to do more tests.
Yeah, careers is coming up. That's going to be the next test. We'll have to figure out our monitoring system and a couple more internal systems. And then right now planned is November 10th is when we'll actually move the data center. So that'll be not the test, but the actual
real
move.
thing. Wait, you don't want to have another test just with all the little tweaks and fixes just to see if it goes perfectly smoothly?
People only like working so many weekends. That's what the problem ends up being.
People's wives only like them working so many weekends.
Yeah, actually, that's more accurate. People's wives only like them working so many weekends.
Well, you could. Why don't you work this weekend and I'll give you Christmas off or something in exchange?
God, it's way better than last year.
We'll have had 2 tests, and since it went well, I think we're going to be pretty comfortable with that. We might actually do the failover a day before, so we have some time to fix anything before the actual move. And then the new data center itself is going to be pretty exciting. We're getting new switching equipment and new networking equipment because we need to do an upgrade there, which is some interesting stuff.
So wait, we must have all kinds of new gear in Corvallis to make it possible for Corvallis to actually hold up the whole site.
Well, I mean, there's some new and there's some recycled. We don't have any idles. There's one idle server, which don't let a dev have access to that.
Yeah, it wasn't actually idle this week. It was being used. Kevin took it over for ML, machine learning training. He managed to crash it by
overheating.
He's using it for his homework on that Coursera class.
Not homework. We've got a little internal challenge within the company to do some predicting, and he really wanted to win, so he took over the extra server in Oregon.
Pegged all the cores, ran out of memory, then it mysteriously rebooted. So,
the machine ever really be available? Doesn't it just immediately get snapped up by someone if it is?
Not a server. They can sit in the data center for a long time.
So in Oregon, what we did was we had the original Stack Overflow equipment. That's what chat's been running on for quite a while. The 2 database servers. One of them runs data.stack exchange, the steady. And then the other one ran chat, and then the 4 IBM web servers. And those are kind of a pain because there's no remote management. If something happens, you call Dalgus, you have him run over and see what went wrong.
Wait, when you say those are the old ones that Jeff built?
Yep.
Yes.
Are those still alive?
They are in Dalgus's
No,
house.
we took them down now.
Oh, okay.
So
Dalgus kept them for old time's sake.
Okay.
Hand built by Jeff Atwood.
We
They're
were
like signed inside. And
they
everything.
are signed inside. We should auction one of them off for charity. Now that we're a top 100 website, you can buy one of our original servers signed by Coding Horror himself. How much would you pay for that? Tweet me and put # IBM server signed by Coding Horror.
# payday.
Payday. Minimum reserve $2,000.
So what we did was we replaced, let's see, there's 5 new web servers. There's 2 new database servers. So when we upgraded to SQL, we kind of shuffled around a little bit because you don't want to go without a backup while we're testing.
When we upgrade to SQL 2012, yeah.
Right. So there's 3 new, and these are really nice boxes that allow us to expand. They're R720s, plenty of horsepower, 384 gig of RAM, and I believe 12 200 gig Intel 710 drives. So they can take these SSDs. We've been criticized a lot for low space or they're going to run out of writes at the same time.
Yeah.
These things take like 2 petabytes of writes. They're really endurance. So that's why we got them. So that's what SO runs.
Are they actually like server class SSDs that are sold for servers or
I don't know if
that makes
you'd
any
only
difference.
buy them that way because they're really expensive.
So
They're like $800 a pop.
There's nothing special about them. They just charge extra and say that they're for servers.
Like a wedding server, just more money.
Yeah.
So we have those. There's a pair in New York, a primary and a backup, and there's one in Oregon, and they're identical. And that's what runs Stack Overflow in the sites database. And then the old Stack Overflow hardware, formatted, got one additional copy of that for Oregon, and that's what all the other sites now run on, all the other databases.
Okay.
And then the old hardware that the sites were on, the first pair of database servers in New York, we retasked. One is a VM box and one is a service box out in Oregon. And then we have 5 new web servers out there because the IBMs could not handle Stack Overflow's load. We've grown quite a bit.
Right.
We're a top 100 site. Did we mention that?
To answer your original question, we are at about a third of the hardware in Oregon that we are in New York. So there's basically we're willing to sacrifice a little performance, and also we're hoping if we fail over to Oregon, we're counting on not a whole lot of stuff in Oregon failing when we're failed over there. So we have a lot of redundancy in New York because we'd much rather just fail over a piece of something than fail over everything.
One of the problems is that it's hard to get another box to our configuration. So if we actually needed an extra piece of hardware in Oregon while we were there, we could mail it from New York, literally, and get it in 24 hours, which is faster than Dell could get as a replacement.
Yes. Well, we do have better support for our most critical stuff. So in theory, I believe they should be delivering us replacements within 4 hours.
How would they ever do that?
You buy it with your server. You buy a maintenance plan.
I know, but how would they ever do that?
There's
how
a
would
guy
they physically
from Dell following Dalgus around everywhere he goes.
Yeah, but does it have all those
He's
SSDs
there.
and then a lot of 384 gigs of RAM and?
Well, the SSDs are we buy separately because Dell doesn't offer what we want.
They do, but they want to shaft you for it.
Okay, they want to shaft you for it.
Okay.
And then memory,
That's
they
their
have
new
depots,
motto.
I believe. If I'm not mistaken, they do have just depots throughout the country with warehouses full of
spare things.
Hardware, spare things, yeah.
For the folks like us.
Now, for the things we buy the SSDs because we save. I think per server when we did the SSDs in memory, it's a $30,000 difference. That's how much we save by doing it ourselves. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of extra SSDs in both locations and a couple extra memory sticks in both locations.
Okay.
That works out pretty good. We haven't actually had an SSD fail yet. We've got a lot of criticism for using them in production. I mean, from some people love it. It's cutting edge. We actually haven't had a single one fail in any of our servers.
Yet.
Now, you heard it here first, folks.
They're all going to fail at the same time.
SSDs never fail.
100%. That's the first line of the movie. The end line has the meteor and Bruce Willis is in, I don't know.
That's a good point. Maybe the monitoring's broken.
That's right. They haven't been working
We've
for 3
never
months.
known when an SSD has failed so far.
All right. So we're going to fail over for the move. The move will probably take a day, right? To move all the hardware up to
a couple days.
That's
Yeah, it's a weekend project.
Okay. And then we'll be back on New York and we'll have Oregon as our failover and we can fail over every once in a while for testing purposes.
We have an internal audience question for which SSDs are we using? We're being asked.
Intel 710 200 gigs for the main beefy servers, and then Intel 320 300 gigs are usually what's in the web tier and the Oregon site server, SQL 02. Chat's also running on one of those clusters.
There you have it.
We can fit 24 of these in one of these Dell boxes now. That's the main reason we changed hardware. Is not the processor. We had plenty. But the old Dell boxes, you're limited to 8 drives. So with SSDs, that pretty much kneecaps your space.
Are they? It's like a 2.5-inch form factor, these drives?
Mm-hmm. So we've only got 12 in there. We can go up to 24. And actually, like what we're doing, George just finished the order. We're going to put a couple more drives on the side and use that for dev as a dedicated RAID section. And we don't have to, it doesn't affect production at all, but we can get the most out of the box.
Wait, what's dev? Oh, dev is the version of every site that we have just for testing things out and playing around with.
Right, and not all
developers.
Of them. We've got about a half dozen or so.
So like dev.stackoverflow.com looks like Stack Overflow when you go there.
The secret.
Right.
What?
I think they would have figured that out.
All right, we'll edit this out in post.
No, it's not really a secret.
There's one guy who gets in there every couple of weeks, and we have to go ban him again.
Oh, you mean it's actually open to the public? You could go on there and log on.
Here's how he does it.
Well, it's not supposed to be, but
But I mean, all he's doing is making a bunch of changes that are just going to get overwritten at some point and don't really matter because it's not on the real site.
He just edits every question on the homepage. He goes, "Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here." It's not really doing anything malicious. So.
This is, what this is like? What was that Stephen King movie, The Langoliers? Did y'all see that?
Oh, that movie.
Where there's...
That was the worst
TV,
movie ever.
Yeah. So
Did they eat the runway at the end?
Yes.
Yes, there you go.
Well, what happens is that they're
You've
on
seen it.
a transcontinental flight, and they somehow get into this alternate universe that doesn't have any people in it.
Yeah.
Which is just like the leftover universe that's now dead. There's no other people there. And they're trying to figure out how to get back to their universe where all the people are.
Mm-hmm.
And so they eat a runway.
No, the Langoliers come and eat you got to see the movie.
The movie, you got to watch it because it's like 6 hours long. It's on TV. You'll be watching it some weekend. It's actually pretty good for the first like 4 hours.
It has Balky.
And then you get to
See,
like
now
the last.
I'm interested.
It has Balky from
you
the
get
cousin.
Towards the end,
cousins.
and then suddenly the Langoliers actually like come
Those
on
are
camera.
Scary. They are scary.
No,
even though they're cartoons.
They're not. They're ridiculous looking.
They
They're
have
like
a million teeth.
Bad 1990s
Spoiler
CGI,
alert.
like drawn with a crayon
Million
on the film.
teeth.
Sorry, question. Why do I want to watch this?
You don't. It's terrible.
But that's exactly what being on Devdas.Overflow is like. You're just like you're walking around,
Oh,
and
I
there's
see
all
the
this.
analogy.
You're like in this world,
The Langoliers are coming.
but there's no people there because this is like you have accidentally landed.
Like Bizarro World.
Yes,
Yeah,
without
yeah.
the people.
And then the Langoliers come and eat
Where
you.
did all the people go? And then you realize that
Yeah, yeah.
it is like that.
Except
so go
you
watch
can
that
see
movie.
secret new features, which is why maybe you'd want to see.
Check.
There's not that many secret new.
No, we tend to roll them out pretty fast.
Now, when we fail over to Oregon, and we are, this is gonna be another one of my smooth segues. When we do fail over to Oregon, the moderators come with us, right?
You know what mods love? Stephen King movies. They love them. They love them. So this is a logical
breaking point. Too bad we don't have ads. Alex, why don't you steal some ads so then we could play an ad. I'll do an ad right now. Sprite Zero
I
is like amazing.
Danny is
No
responsible
caffeine,
for selling it.
no sugar, no calories.
Bell servers. They follow you around, but then they shaft you.
Do an ad for our latest site.
When we come back, oh yeah, our latest site.
Wondering where you came from?
Ask Patents.
Genealogy.
Oh, that's what Gene
Wondering
means
what
on
our
my
latest
list. I
site
don't know what
is?
that was.
Visit stackexchange.com.
So yeah, so we've got a new genealogy site live, and I think one of the most interesting. I don't know. It's interesting to me because I was so wrong, and that's like this unique circumstance that is fascinating and rare. And but genealogy was one of these sites I think we were looking at, and we weren't maybe as confident as we always are about what it's going to look like. Is it really going to be a topic with good complex questions that's going to work? And part of it was even in discussing the naming. There was kind of this.
I can't even spell it. Where does Gene?
Perhaps it's not for you, Joel.
A-L.
Gene. Really?
A-L-O-G-Y. Yeah, it's not what you think.
Start with Gene Wilder.
Genealogy.
Take off
Yeah,
the
it's
Wilder.
weird.
It's less wild. It's not as much Wilder.
Okay, genealogy site. So it's doing well, Jay. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I mean, the thing I'd jump out is I think it's one of those where
it's thick.
Initially when we were talking about it, there was this question, and even the name had sort of people who are interested in their family history. We kind of were wringing our hands and going, "Who isn't interested in that? That's not a community. That's not." And they kept saying, "No, you don't get it." But so there was this question of, I think and again, it goes to people outside our communities often don't understand the communities. That's what makes them communities, right? Is that sort of focus. And so we were looking at it and wondering, are there really complex questions? And I think there's been great activity. And there's interesting questions. Like, there's discussions about, one of the first ones we saw in the first couple of days was people were charting out their families, and they track these histories visually, was how do I handle describing gender reassignment surgery, where you have sort of this event that is the birth, that, is the birth of a son, say, but then currently you've got a grandmother or an aunt or somebody who is no longer, male. And so there's questions.
This is common.
It's common enough. And
there's a lot of there's a lot of things that the first version of genealogy programs would get stuck with, like people marrying their children, etc. It was just like, I'm sorry, but that seems to be what the historical record shows.
You want more branches.
It's not that we approve of it, but that if we can't enter it into the software,
that's why you need to go back in time and change it
normative.
But then there was questions where people were saying the records they'd found were a British naval official record of what someone did there, and they're trying to figure out from that how to drill deeper and learn where the person was assigned to fill in kind of these where ancestors
historical
lived.
Right.
And other people are responding, well, I didn't serve in the British, but I was in the Australian Navy, and I can speak to the records are very similar if you go here. I mean, it's some pretty really, I think, cool, esoteric, deep questions. We seem to be seeing, I think, a good, strong community growing. So.
It does. I mean, it is a new site, but it is getting a lot of traffic for a site this young. Cool.
So, yeah. And then we've got one more that's on the verge.
Genealogy.
Robotics is I think just the commitment stage is coming to an end. They've got a whole bunch of committers. I think we're going to see that launch into private beta very soon.
So that's coming soon.
Yes, so we'll look back on that someday when Skynet becomes self-aware as the beginning of the end.
Excellent.
They're going live in the very near future.
Does these sites have moderators?
It's funny. It's funny you should ask about moderators because they love Bruce Willis movies with meteors in Oregon. I may be getting the segue thing wrong. These sites do not yet have moderators, so no.
We had let me introduce my segue that I'm trying to do here, which is that we have now probably last time I asked it was 275 moderators, but it's probably more than that. But it is a lot, and we've started to address the problem of the possibility of a moderator who's shall we say whose moderation actions are sort of inconsistent with the desire of the community or the other moderators on the team.
Yeah, I think I'd almost step back for a second and say I think one of the things that we've been thinking about is elections, right? You talked before on the podcast, shouldn't belabor the election notion, but I think we're still the only major website. I googled it yesterday. Where mods are elected, right? Most of the big sites that have moderation, the people on Reddit, et cetera, there's sort of people apply and they're appointed basically by the company. Right. And we have these elections. I think it's actually pretty awesome. There's a real process, and people talk about why they want to be mods and what their positions are. And there's live events, people ask questions, and it's this phenomenally democratic process. It goes back to that our communities really do in many ways define most of how the site and their community, their site is run.
Right.
And so when we don't have a lot of, and our mods are actually pretty awesome, as I think both the result of the quality of the community and the community picks them. And generally speaking, I think the challenges in the past, we get user complaints all the time. And often it's, this mod's mean and they suspended me because I broke all the rules and that sucks and they shouldn't do that. Much of the time the answer is, well, it's frustrating and I always know how things work, yada, yada. And
so essentially one truism is, although people do complain about moderators, 99% of those complaints are incorrect.
They are, and when they are correct, I think it's like anything else that has a kind of organic evolution. Is they fix themselves quickly as we reach out to the moderator and go, this actually seems like a fair point. Like I know you're going for, but I think they were actually trying to do something good here, and they weren't actually breaking this rule, whatever it was. A good dumb example is there's fuzzier lines about kind of how much interfering with content we're going to do on a user's profile page. As a good example of where people put things in their profile page that we would never permit on the main site.
Right.
But if they're not truly offensive, hate speech, etc., we tend to give people a wider berth. It's kind of their personal spot. And where a mod might be trying to do the right thing and edit out something offensive and someone will complain, we'll go back and go, you know what? That's probably not over the line for that page or whatever it is. And in those scenarios...
would it be okay to put binders of women on your...
Binders of women?
Yeah.
What's a binder of women?
It's a meme, is what it is.
Oh, I missed.
Do you not internet?
That was in the elections.
Were
you offline yesterday?
Oh, this is like a political thing?
Mitt Romney said that in the debate.
I don't like the news or the
debate.
politics or the president or the other guy who wants to be the president. That's not. No.
Not your thing.
No. Mitt Romney's the tall, handsome fellow with the.
That's right.
Matter. It doesn't matter.
He's got binders full of women. That's the point.
So we have 301. No, not binders full of women. We have 301 moderators. We got an answer. 301 moderators. But anyway, so when our mods, and the rare occasions where the complaints are valid, what we usually get is a mod who goes back in and says, you know what, we've been talking about this, and I think actually this was the wrong action, and I want to fix it. The mod's course correct, and there's a phenomenal collaboration. Probably even less important than us is the mods work together both within a site, obviously, and we actually even have chat rooms that are for mods that had this situation. What would you do here? How do I handle this? And there's great interaction, and kind of teaching there. Mm-hmm. We actually call it the teachers lounge. But over time, one of the things that struck us is we don't really have a great process for what would happen if we had a mod. Our mods we don't have re-elections right now. We've talked about this before, and you lose some experience. It's a complex question of whether you don't want people also to be. We kind of want our mods to function in their approach more like, say, a Supreme Court justice than, say, a member of Congress, and they think about situations where people feel like they're running because they have a job that is
right. They don't. You want them to do the right thing, not the popular thing. You want them to feel like they have tenure.
Right. And I think
a little bit,
like
at a university.
Should it be dictator for life? I don't know. Maybe we should put long limits. But anyway, we've talked about limits in the past, and we don't have any because we're concerned about some of the things it might cause right now. So the question comes up is, what if we did get a situation where, a mod goes wildly off the reservation, goes crazy, and develops, they're hit by a meteor, and as a result, their behavior gets wildly different. And what we wanted to do is really get to a place where it's not one of these, well, we're going to decide that when that happens, we will pluck them out and remove them, and would still do that if it was an emergency and they were, running rampant on the site. There was chaos instantly. But I think the notion is we've built this sort of beautiful democracy of sorts. Alex, make that sound either more or less inspirational. I think I'm right in the middle there. And, we don't want to have as a situation where then, the sense is that someone could get elected and then we'll go, nah, we don't like that. We're going to get rid of them. We wanted to make sure that the process to reconsider a mod at some point is, I think, similarly community-driven as the one that puts them in power. And so we did what we usually do, or we try to do when we're trying to figure stuff out about the community. And we kind of put out a question saying, hey, we want to figure out a way to do this. And we solicited a lot of input. And we got, I think, a lot of good feedback from mods and from regular users on Meta. So now we're trying to put that together and figure out what the best course of action is.
Okay. So rogue moderator, there's a plan.
Summarily executed was the answer we came up with, and we're going to go with it.
I think that the plan was that the other mods, or actually all the mods, would meet, and there would be a vote.
Yeah. So I think,
but it would be of the mods, of the democratically elected mods. It's really not. I mean, the most important thing here is that we sort of decided this is not going to be Stack Exchange. The company decides that you as a moderator are not working, because that's A, not scalable, and B, does not actually show any attempt to reflect the wishes of the community in any way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And we also certainly decided that it's not like there's going to be a recall election, God forbid, because that just creates a gigantic, stressful.
Horrible for the site.
Horrible for the site.
It's hard to get right.
I was going to say shit show. I don't know if this is...
Shit show is the technical.
Yeah.
But I think one of the real challenges, too, is it's hard if you require a huge number of site participants to vote in something of this sort, aside from poisoning the whole site. Yeah. It's hard to get enough to really weigh in.
A lot of times it's based on information that you don't want to be made public because it's private information about moderator decisions.
Right. And if you let it be a small number of complaints that could just do it, the problem you've got then is, the correctly, people get suspended once in a while for really bad behavior and stuff. You don't want a handful of disgruntled bad actors to be able to not even necessarily take down a mod, but create a scenario where they can really make a mod's job difficult or light. We don't want mods walking on eggshells because of the process.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of this sort of mod solution we're heading towards is that the mods are very good. I think they're all invested in the site. They really care about it.
I wonder how you remove a Supreme Court justice. Is there any provision for removing a Supreme Court justice?
Yes, they can be impeached.
By who?
By Congress.
Really?
Wait, what about separation of...
It's an incredibly high bar.
Wikipedia.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, hey, Alex got that right.
I think that's true. It just takes a large majority.
An incredibly high bar. I mean, it's a similar bar to amending the Constitution.
Yeah.
Someone pointed out they can also die is also an effective way for them to be removed from that. Kevin Montrose, I think, nailed the second way a Supreme Court justice can be removed from power. That statement is probably going to get us all investigated tomorrow.
Yeah,
we're on a list.
It's all right. We can't use this podcast anyway. It's
there you go. Right,
we're 3 out of 4 for offensive.
Samuel Chase was impeached by the House, but not removed by the Senate.
Yeah. So impeachment just removes his immunity and allows him to be tried by the Senate process. Yeah. So bottom line, if things go wrong, this is going to have to be a decision taken by sort of a supermajority of other moderators. It's going to be democratic. It's not really up to us. I think we've abdicated. Or there isn't a sense that the Stack Exchange Corporation or that the community members that Stack Exchange pays are the right people to be making those calls when they're judgment calls.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Other than an emergency where they will certainly take action to prevent, harm that cannot be undone later.
Yep.
Okay, that's about moderators. Checking that off. And last we have Gene, but I don't know who that is. Gene Kelly, the dancer?
It seems possible that was before you knew how to spell genealogy and you just stopped where you ran out of confidence. I'm guessing. I don't know.
That might be what happened. Anything else? David? Kyle? Nick, any last minute comments?
No, we've offended enough.
All right. Tune in next time for podcast number 35 when we have special guest star Scott Hanselman.
Yay.
Right? Alex, can I say that with confidence?
Yes.
And in the meantime, see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See, we had not enough Smurfs when we were live.
The Smurfs do not make software for tracking down your ancestors and converting them.
I'm sorry. Do you have a citation of some sort for that? Because I do not know that to be true.
Yes.